Some people call it a dream. I call it a hunch.
In my thoughts, in truth, because I love you. In my thoughts, in truth, because I love you. In my thoughts, in truth, because I love you. In my thoughts.
A horrible dream. What that was all about.
In many ways, the past is like a dream, not least because some of it's a bit embarrassing and unpleasant, and we'd rather not talk about it. Sometimes it's frightening. Whoa! And sometimes it's just plain rude. Dreams can be the indication of a troubled soul, and throughout history, people have often suffered from troubled souls. Today, if your spiritual equilibrium is out of whack, then the most popular way to restore it is to go for a night out in the town where you drink imitation German beer and sing "To All the Girls I've Loved Before" out of tune on a karaoke machine. But this was not always so. In earlier times, people tried to maintain a healthy spirit by ecclesiastical means. Everyone had religion, and that's a lot of people. And when you have a lot of people, you have the opportunity to raise a lot of money. And where there's money, there's power. In the Middle Ages, the power-crazed and the spiritually needy were, paradoxically, drawn to the same place. The only game in town. The church.
Paisley Abbey, south of Glasgow. An ex-monastery, now a tourist attraction. Maybe it always was. I often wonder about the guys who built those places. If you look at the imagery left lying around, then you'd believe they were pious and tireless in creating magnificent works for the greater glory of God, but I don't know. People are people. Somehow I get a feeling about those guys, those monks. Were they really angels or devils in fancy costumes?
John, tell me about the guys that built this place.
Well, they were Cluniac monks brought here by Walter the High Steward. Now, Walter the High Steward was the second in command to the King of Scots, a very powerful and wealthy man. And in the mid-1160s, he won a substantial victory just near here over an invading army. And we think that the monastery may have been founded as a thank offering. So he brought up monks from his hometown of Much Wenlock in Shropshire, for the Cluniac order.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What's a Cluniac monk?
They're a group of Benedictine monks who were based at Cluny in eastern France.
Right.
And they were a religious order, so they didn't get their hands dirty in the actual building and other things. They got people to do it for them.
Some things never change. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so they were also very keen on what we would now call tourism, but they call pilgrimage.
Oh, really?
Because a big monastery like this would need to be self-financing.
Yeah.
They needed income from visitors, tourists, so they usually built these monasteries near major centers of communication.
So they were trying to raise money when they were building these?
Yes, indeed.
This was a profit-making exercise?
Profit-making exercise, visitors coming, travelers stopping here, bed and breakfast, garage facilities for their horses and stabling and everything, and also the added advantage of having a local saint, St. Mirren, who was possibly buried either on this site or near here, and so that was an added bonus to bring the visitors in. Well, here we have all we really know about St. Mirren, a frieze depicting scenes from his life, carved about the 1460s to 70s by a chap called Thomas Hector, and put in when there was an idea to revive the tourist trade. The pilgrimage.
So this was put in as a tourist attraction by the Cluniac monks, right?
Absolutely. Probably highly painted in bright colours and most attractive, not to mask some of the lovely carving details that we can see on the linen work and other details. And then in this kind
I felt John was giving me his spiel for the tourist.
folds of the
I'd have to dig deeper if I wanted to get the real picture.
child above.
John, there's a lot of very pious monuments and very spiritual, lovely-looking things, but it doesn't really tell us a lot about what they were like. Is there anything else?
Well, yes, there's the complete site of the monastery still to be discovered to the
Yeah.
south of the building. And we've started...
Where they lived.
Where they lived, where
Yeah.
their guests stayed, the pilgrims stayed.
Yeah,
lot
all
of-
the
lot-
tourists. about.
all the tourists. And so what we're hoping to do is to carry out an archaeological investigation. And to do that, fortunately, most monasteries are built on a similar ground plan.
Yeah.
And one of the major features is a great drain going through the centre to clear away all the rubbish from this hotel complex. And what usually happened, and has happened here in Paisley, is they built a drain some 800 yards long,
Uh-huh.
fed from the river upstream, so there'd be a constant flow of water sluicing through this drain, clearing away all the rubbish.
Yeah.
And because the drain acts as a spinal column throughout the monastic buildings, by finding the drain, we should be able to find links into some of the buildings. Well, you wouldn't think you were standing in the middle of a great medieval monastery here, but in fact
Yeah.
we're over the site of the monks' dormitory.
Here.
Exactly where we're standing here. And over by the first lamppost is the site, we think, of the infirmary chapel. And that's where we think the High Stewards of Scotland may be buried, under the dual carriageway.
The original Stuart family
Yes.
are buried in there.
Yes, the progenitors of the present royal house.
And the drain comes from there up
The drain comes kind of underneath us and crosses the road to the right.
over this way.
Yes.
Right.
Frank Sinatra once said he was in favour of anything that got you through the night, whether it be a Bible or a bottle of Jack Daniels. I know what Frank means. Sometimes when conventional methods fail, you have to try more unusual techniques. John was obviously from this school of thought. He'd go to any lengths to find out about that drain, even employing a dowser.
As far as we know, the drain runs right across this park. That's the Abbey in the distance there.
Yeah.
Right across this park and goes up into the river beyond that factory.
Right,
over there.
yeah. Dowsing, what's that? What do you, I mean, I've heard of dowsing, but I don't really know what it means or what you do.
Well, it's a way of finding things that are underground. You
Right.
can use it for all sorts of things. Either underground water or lost objects or, as in this case, archaeological stuff.
And what's the, I mean, assuming you're dowsing, you use these, right? These
Well,
bits of metal?
this is just a
These special
used
bits
coat,
of metal?
used coat hanger.
Used coat hanger? Does it have to be a
just-
used coat hanger?
It's best if it's been used before, right?
Right, okay.
And basically, you can either use two, in which case they cross when you come to what you're looking for,
Yeah.
or I just use one and it just turns. And what you do is you keep in your mind a picture, a mental image of what you're looking for,
Yeah.
and then by tuning in like that, when you come to what you're looking for, you get a reaction in your body, which is shown by the movement of the rod.
All right, well, let's have a wee crack at it then.
Right.
Do you want to,
Can
can I have a wee shot?
Right, on you go.
Yeah, we'll see if it happens for me
Right,
first, right? I'll
okay.
douse for it.
Down that way.
Down this way, and keep the mental image of
That's
a drain.
right.
Mental image of a drain. I can't believe this is happening. Look at that. Isn't that so weird?
There
That
you
is
are.
so weird.
And that's
that
it,
is
sort
so
of right
weird.
on top of it now.
That is really, it's really strange.
Science or hokum? One way to find out.
Can you dig a little bit through that?
This is
What is that, clay?
very, very hard, compacted clay.
Yeah.
It's taken a lot of effort to put this probe down. Nothing
Nothing there?
there. But you see, it's very, very
Yeah.
tough indeed.
Yeah.
So I fear we'll have to wait till we can get a bigger digger,
A bigger digger. Yeah.
and see whether we can go down further. It doesn't mean to say the drain isn't there.
Yeah.
It's just that we cannot, with this machinery, get to the depth.
The drain network was down there somewhere. We knew that. Part of it had already been discovered. And the evidence that had come up was, well, surprising. the monks were looking a little less angelic.
That's one of the most charming things we found, a little dice, bone dice.
Oh, wow.
It's a bit unusual, I'm told, because the 5 is opposite the 6.
Oh, yeah.
Having led a blameless life, I don't know the significance of that. But I have been told that 2/3 of medieval dice are loaded.
Is this one loaded?
I don't think so. We've tried it. Well, they are. 6 straight away.
One.
And a 1, not so good.
Yeah.
But it shows that the guests, the pilgrims coming to the monastery, they were having to fill in their evening hours, home entertainment, playing games.
Well, Monopoly.
Well, or just straight gambling perhaps, but they
So
were,
they were doing the gambling in the
yes, I think
monastery?
so. I think so. Just,
Gambling not a sin at that time?
well, not if you didn't overdo it.
Yeah.
But I think you didn't upset your guests too much by having too many house rules.
Mm.
And as well as gaming, they would be playing music. And this little thing doesn't look much, but it's a tuning peg for keeping the strings taut on some form of stringed instrument, as you might have at the end of a guitar or something today.
Like a machine head on a guitar,
Yeah. And again, just a wee bit of evidence that to while away the hours, they're playing their own music.
This lines and squiggles.
Well, in fact, it's the most exciting of all our finds because, in fact, it's music. There are little square diamond-shaped notes, and it's a stave of music. And
so it is.
we believe it's the earliest recorded polyphonic music in Scotland. But our most exciting find has been this. It's a sweeping statement to say you never find a complete pot in an archaeological excavation. But this is an early 16th century chamber pot.
It's a potty.
Yep. The monks, each monk would have one, and they purposely collected urine for bleaching purposes. And when it was discovered, only the handle was showing above the silt. And the lad who found it, fortunately, didn't do the normal thing, put 2 fingers in and pull, which would have broken it. He had the sense to work his way around and preserve that. Oh, it's a remarkable find.
John wants to give me a guided tour of the drain, but I have my doubts. One thing's for sure, I don't want to go prodding about in a wet drain full of ancient old poo unless it's completely necessary. As an idea, it's about as attractive as snogging Jockey Wilson after he's been for a beef madras. I've got a contact at the University of Glasgow, Camilla Dixon. She works in the botany department, so I've decided to ask her if I can find out anything by looking at the stuff that comes out of medieval bots.
This is a fascinating sample which shows a great deal of burnt oat chaff.
I mean, what can you learn from looking at it? What can you find out about the people that lived there from looking at that stuff?
Well, since it comes from a drain and we're presuming that sewage has gone into it,
Yeah.
you can find directly evidence of what people have been eating in the past.
Really?
Certain foodstuffs will go straight through the digestive system unharmed and are excreted and are preserved in the silt of the sewage.
What kind of stuff would be preserved? What would pass through the digestive system?
Well, seeds in particular would be very recognisable. And in fact, we've already found seeds of fig. We hope to find remains of bread or porridge.
Mm-hmm.
They would probably have eaten oatmeal porridge, and they would certainly have eaten bread. Whether it was wheaten bread or barley bread, we don't know.
Well, meat, fish, stuff like that?
Certainly, there are bones that have been found.
Yeah.
There's a rather nice fish bone here.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
that's...
turned up.
That fish bone's gone through someone's digestive system then.
Quite possibly.
It's a bit large for that kind of thing as well, isn't it?
Well, you must remember that kitchen and garden refuse would have found its way into the drain as
Sure.
well. There would be quite a mixture. And this is remains of shellfish.
There's a cockle there, yeah.
It looks like it, possibly oyster shell, but it's not yet been finally
Well, they were having
identified.
quite a nice diet. They were having quite a nice time for themselves, weren't they?
It looks so, yes.
Yeah.
This is actually the fossil moss that's been found, the leafy shoots of it.
Yeah.
And it's so well preserved you can identify it. to the species.
You can tell that what that type of moss is,
That's right.
and it's this type.
And most of it is this type.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing about this is that you can pull it up from the ground, forming a sort of nice mat or weft like
Yeah.
this, and it's ideal for wiping purposes.
So what we're looking at here
Mhm.
is it's medieval Andrex, isn't it?
It could well be.
Yeah, and this has been used.
Might quite probably.
From what Camilla had told me, it seemed if I wanted to get to the heart of the matter, to find out what these monks were really like, then I would have to go down the drain myself. I was still reluctant to go. I was sure it had something to do with that bad dream. It was then I noticed the music. It was like it was telling me that the decision had already been made.
That's a little extract from this priceless slate, and one of the most exciting musical finds in Scotland. It's probably the top part of a piece. We don't know whether it was from a mass or a motet, because unfortunately there's no room for the words. It would certainly have been a vocal composition, simply because organs weren't really used at this time. I think it was written on slate simply because manuscript would have been so expensive to produce at the time, and there would be a need for something more permanent, as well as something useful as a teaching aid, and I think that's very important. There would have been a boys' choir here, and I think we know this because of the type of music written, not just this, but the music of Robert Carver, for instance, which has a very high treble part, written roughly about the same time.
Solid floor, stone ribs, stone roof, no mortar.
How come it's in such perfect nick?
I think because of the depth that it's at, that it survived, that the ground is at least 6 foot deep above us, and so it survived. And we've had to take out quite a quantity of silt. The tide mark here shows the level of silt that we've taken out.
How come it goes so silty? I mean, was it...
I think the main problem was that from the dating evidence and historical evidence that about 1420 the monastery had 2 rival abbots.
Two abbots?
2 abbots, each claiming to be in charge, and for the next 25 years nobody knew who to take their orders from. And we know again from the historic record that the administration of the monastery just fell into ruin, and we think the drain was allowed to silt up, and by the time the abbots had sorted themselves out, there was just too much silt to take away, so they just left it, which has been to our advantage.
Because the silt preserves the stuff.
Because the silt preserved the stuff, we've sieved everything we've taken out, and so a lot of things have been saved for us.
Yeah.
I brought down 2 pieces with me. This is the matrix of a seal. This is the thing you actually press into the sealing wax.
Yeah. I don't want to drop.
Of an abbot. It's very badly corroded.
Yeah.
It's been broken on purpose, so the seal could never be used again. But that could be the matrix of one of the feuding abbots from the dating evidence.
Really?
But
So this is one of the guys that's responsible
it could well
for
be,
the...
could well be. Quite remarkable. And then, as we saw earlier, many pieces of slate,
Oh, wow, that's so
and that
tiny.
with writing on.
That's, it's like a piece of paper.
Yeah. 2 different handwritings, front and back.
What's on it, do you know?
I believe it's a love poem.
A love poem?
Yeah.
Do you know what it says?
No, because I haven't got the skill to read it, and we've been using experts at Glasgow University to tell us exactly what it is and where it's from.
I was happy to get out of the sewer and back into the daylight. A wet Wednesday in Glasgow never looked so good. It was time to get the gen on the poetry. This is the thing then, is it?
This is what I make of it, at any rate.
Yeah. Have a look then.
And as you can imagine, this is... And
At the start of it, eh?
that's right, and it's on both sides of the slate. So this is the reverse side, and this is the front, well, the other side.
Yeah, I see.
And so the only thing I really have to go on are things like my heart she has, and because I love, and in governance. And if you imagine this is all broken off into my thought. But the only thing that really immediately catches you is the fact that it looks like a love lyric, my heart, she, etc. And I don't know if you'd agree or not.
Yeah, oh no, I do.
Because I love.
Yeah, because I love is a bit of a
Right.
giveaway,
That's
I
right.
think.
That's
And
right.
in governance.
In governance. That would be sort of a courtly love term, I think.
Courtly love term. Courtly love term.
Well,
So we're talking about romantic love here. We're not talking about, son to mother or anything like that, are
I
we?
think it is definitely a love lyric.
Yeah.
Because most of the secular poetry was of this type, the sonnets, sequences,
Right.
Dante and so on. And it's very likely that he's simply practicing, let's say, like a pop star or someone writing a lyric.
So it's
not necessarily
conceivable he's
to any-
writing a poem for someone else even.
Of course, yes.
It's like you go to the
possible,
monk,
that's
he'll
right.
write you a poem.
It's possible. It is possible.
But
yeah.
you don't think it is that, really?
Well, I mean, it could be. Another reason is that he is actually writing to a woman. I mean, in the monastics, monks weren't all that perfect in those days.
Now there's the rub.
Yeah.
Now, we're looking at a society where it's all men.
Uh-huh.
And he could be writing to a woman.
Right.
Or it could be a fella writing to a fella.
That's right. It's possible. It's just, but yeah. See, and then there's another
Mind you, it
third.
says because she has. Mind you.
Mhm. But see, another possibility that that is even that I would put my money on is the fact that it could be to the Virgin Mary. That it is.
No, that would be very, very well behaved then, wouldn't it? And
What you'd expect.
yeah.
The thing is, in the Middle Ages, it's very difficult to the love lyric to say if it's addressed to a woman or the Virgin Mary, because in fact a lot of the religious poetry is described in erotic terms,
You're
or
joking.
secular terms. That's right. yes.
Really?
And the relationship either between Christ and his church, based on the book in the Bible, the Song of Solomon, which is very important, which is largely a love poem. And this influenced a lot of the of medieval writings. So you get these poems which, in fact, some of our undergraduates are a wee bit shocked, or at least they're surprised, that
Takes a lot to show an undergraduate, Graham.
I'll be surprised.
Yeah.
But a lot of the religious lyrics, in fact, are written in love terms, and vice versa. A lot of the love lyrics are written in religious terms too.
All right, so we can't really be sure then that this particular piece is a poem from a man to a woman or a man to a man in romantic terms.
Or a man to the Virgin Mary.
Yeah. But we can't be sure it's not either. So, it seems like the old-time monks and abbots weren't so pious after all. What with their music making and their loaded dice and their feuds, it seems like they liked a bit of fun, but hey, that's never been a sin in my book. It seems like they were angels some of the time, but, well, everyone's got a bit of the devil in them, haven't they? Those old-time monks couldn't be blamed for looking for a bit of happiness. For me, happiness is a warm telephone. Hello. Yeah. 40 a day plus expenses. Yeah. Yeah, I'll look into it. Sure. Call me next week. Same time, same channel. Cheerio. That love poem from all those years ago kept spinning around in my head. In my thoughts, in truth, because I love you. In my thoughts, in truth, because I love you. In my thoughts, in truth, because I love you.